Hey, Mark, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, gives a little background on yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So, Mark Peters, currently the Vice President of Sales for North America at Safeguard Medical. Been in sales for over a decade now. Started off like most of us in the world, where holding the bag myself out in the field, selling on a day in, day out basis. And slowly but surely proved my worth and my value along the way and started managing people.
Is that something that you clearly wanted to do from the beginning, or was it something that you pulled into?
It was something I definitely wanted to do. I always saw myself as wanting to manage folks. I really enjoy and appreciate the concept of being able to be in a position to be able to impact somebody's life. So once I showed and proved my worth that I could do it myself, I said to myself, hey, let's show some others uh, how to do it as well and pave that path.
Yeah. And what was the first year like?
A pain in the neck,
It wasn't smooth.
right? You get to inherit folks that you're not necessarily in alignment with philosophically. You got to have to play bad guys sometimes and pull the band-aid off. But ultimately, after about a year and a half, you start getting your own team, you start recruiting your own people, and you put yourself in a really, really good position, which is always nice.
Cool. And what you like about it the most?
I think my biggest piece of what I enjoy doing with folks is being able to show them that you don't have to do it my way. You can do it with your own flavor and still be successful. But I can tell you these are the basic fundamentals and the basic pillars you need in order to be a successful sales professional.
And what are those pillars?
So I subscribe to the notion of outwork, out hustle, outperform, which all the folks that I've managed throughout my career and my previous role for the past 10 years that I spent at Cardiac Science, which I know you've spoken to a lot of folks from that world over the past few months. Um, that outwork, out hustle, outperform is really predicated on the idea that DNA is critical. There's a lot of salespeople. There's not a lot of sales professionals, and there's a big key difference. And I hate to be so blunt with folks, but many people think they're in sales, but you're not really in sales unless you can say, I'm a sales professional. And that starts with the basic DNA that I'm willing to work harder than the person next to me. And there's a reason why in every sales organization, you have your top 3% that are just the performers. Then you've got your middle 57%, and then you've got your 40% on the bottom that just churn in and out. And typically halfway up, even in that 57% and below, those aren't sales professionals. Those are folks that may not have that DNA strain to really be in sales for the rest of their life.
And when you say DNA, do you believe it's a innate characteristic or a learned characteristic or both?
Work ethic is innate. You
You
can teach
think?
somebody how to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're born into it, right? A lot of folks are born into a scenario where they have to work hard. They have to start working at a young age. They like money. They want to be successful. Whatever their circumstance may be, they have it. They've got that fire, that energy, that will within. You can teach somebody how to sell. They may not give you your 70-hour weeks. They may not work those trade shows on the weekends, and they still may be relatively successful. But it does take that from a young age, that desire to want to be successful to ultimately succeed in sales.
Now, the only challenge I have with that is people think it's the only thing. And I had this territory, and my manager put his buddy in next to me, and he goes, "This guy's a grinder. He'll outwork anybody." And he did. Didn't sell a thing. You know?
That's right.
And I used to have this, I had this motion that I did because he was kind of a hammerhead. He had played lacrosse or rugby. I put the helmet on and I snapped the chin, and he would just run at the customer as hard as he could.
So here's what I would say. Here's what I would say to that. When I talk about outwork and out hustle, you can outwork somebody and do it smart. You can
Yes.
out hustle somebody and do it professionally. And ultimately that allows you to outperform. And I think the reason why I've always subscribed to that notion is that you're going to get somebody who necessarily isn't going to work 100 hours a week, and that's okay. But if they can work 40 hours a week and still outperform, they still have something that's unique about them. I think where I like the idea of DNA is part of why I like managing people is giving folks opportunity.
Yeah.
And if I know somebody has that DNA, I can put some shoe polish on them and put them in a position that changes their life,
Yeah.
right? And that's something I've always enjoyed doing as a commercial leader.
And I see, like, depending on what you're selling, the right mix, right? Because if you're selling to doctors versus selling to engineers or somebody, and how complicated the sale is, how many meetings
Yeah.
there are, how competitive is it, how smart your competition is. Are you a Me Too product, or are you 5 years ahead of your competitors?
Right, right. And it's good observations, right? Because depending on the type of sale, relationships, consultative, simple B2B, I've got a trinket, you need to buy it, give it back. You have to figure out that profile, right?
Yeah.
But my experience has always been with that the profile itself has a equal amount to do with the expectation of the organization for where they need to perform, right? And most good sales leaders know that you're not going to hire a president's club guy every single time. You're not going to hire the number one rep in the company every single time. You're going to have to put a lot of blood, sweat, equity into that rep, that candidate, to get them to a position where they're performing. And depending upon what you're selling and how you're selling it, a monkey could sit in the back room and sell some basic things, right? That's the reason Amazon exists. That's the reason why we've got retail outlets for that. When you start thinking about verticals like technology and SaaS and software and medical devices, and you need to have kind of an expertise level
Yeah.
to be able to have some credibility and credence in your market, you do require a little bit more. But that's, I think, where for me it comes back to DNA. Because if you have a hard worker, even if they're not the brightest bushel in the basket, guess what? You can still get them to study the books, to learn, to test them and quiz them and onboard them in a way. And I've always appreciated that, because when you change somebody's life like that and you show them that you want to give them a shot, there's a loyalty factor there. And in a world like sales, where every 3 to 5 years, as quotas go up and the amount of money you're making goes down, what happens? Reps start looking. That avoids that aspect a little bit more.
Yeah. And what do you see as the key distinction between that top 3% that you said and that 57?
Lifestyle. A lot of folks think of their career as a job. Really good sales professionals live it.
Yeah.
They live it every day, whether it be on their personal side of things where they're involved and bring their family and their kids, whether it be just the sheer amount of time and that they devote to their work week. Um, you have to have a lifestyle that is dedicated to being a sales professional, right? And that's where, again, the distinction between, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm in sales, versus what do you do for a living? I'm a sales professional,
Yeah.
right? That is a clear distinction. If you do not allow yourself to live and breathe being in sales, you're always going to be in the top 10, not the top three.
And, but then how do you prevent the burnout? The health problems, the headaches,
The $1 million question, right?
the
So
addictions.
there's the addictions. There's only so far that money can take you. I've had the luxury of making a ton of money myself as a professional individual contributor. I have been afforded the opportunity to see sales reps that come from an OTE plan of 100 grand and end up making 400 grand, and what that does to change their family's life for them. Money only goes so far to prevent burnout.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is you can get the money to start that burnout process and I'm sorry, prevent that burnout process where, hey, you're going to make a ton of money at the end of the year with your bonus. Keep going, keep pushing. But the desire for most people that are making that sort of money, they want more professionally. What opportunity do I have to contribute to the company's greater good? What kind of opportunity do I have to grow in my career? What additional responsibilities can I take on myself? Not every sales organization affords the opportunity to put somebody into management. And a lot of people don't want to go to management.
Right.
So, what other things can you provide them? Right. And that's where you've got the sales executive councils and you've got their ability to sit with the C-level folks at organizations and interact with them and develop professionally that way. There's an additional currency other than the dollar that you give someone that becomes really important to them as they start making money and money becomes not the primary focus anymore.
And have you found a way of retaining that top 3%? Because what typically happens is you have to grow. The territory has to come from somewhere. You can't take it from the C players because they didn't even make their number, or do you?
Yeah.
Right?
So the hardest challenge that most organizations face is they put the burden of how the company needs to grow on the biggest performers rather than getting rid of the worst performers and ultimately hiring more talent for everyone to get better.
Yeah.
There's other organizations that, depending upon where the company is, they see the ability to every year evaluate a compensation plan so that folks don't feel like they're going after an impossible target. And I think that you have to have a mix of both, right? A lot of organizations are afraid to cut off dead weight. Let's just call a spade a spade. There's many organizations that have salespeople that stick around for 2 to 5 years too long.
Yeah.
And I've always subscribed to the idea that you have the conversation. Are you happy? Do you want to be here? Do you wake up every day with a smile on your face? And if somebody can't answer those questions the right way, let's show them the exit properly, thank them for their contribution, and let them move to something that makes them ultimately happy.
And how do you judge that? How do you judge that it's them versus the patch versus something outside of their control?
Being humble,
Yeah.
right? So what I say to that is I tell everybody this, I'm wrong 56 times a day. I'm right maybe 2 times a day. And being able to have the humility to say that out loud as a commercial leader, there's not many folks that can say that. There's also not so many folks in general that can admit that they're wrong a lot, right? A lot of people are too prideful. When somebody brings something to your attention and you're managing them and you get to know their family and you get to know their life and you get to know a lot about them, a normal human being wants to be able to help that out and not just go, you're not performing your 60% of plan. So it is a responsibility of that regional manager or that VP of sales to be able to really peel the layer of the onions back. Did we mismanage comp? Did we mismanage our quota? Did we have a 3-year trailing run in this geography
Right.
that was predicated off of things that will never happen again, and we're judging them on that? And you have to be confident to go, we made a mistake and let's make it right. And if that means you make it right by changing the quota 6 months in, or make it right by giving them an end of the year bonus, be a human, right? Business is about being a human, and that's important too.
Yeah. And what do you look for when you're interviewing people? I mean, other than the energy, or what evidence, what asset tests do you have? Is it sports? Is it
Yeah. So this has been something that I laugh at because when I first started managing people, it was laser focused on what are you doing right now? How much money do you want to make? How much money can I make you with your work ethic? I think where it's evolved to now is more around a full spectrum of probably 4 things. I think the first one is they've got to be competitive,
yes?
right? Not necessarily a Division 1 or a Division 2 athlete, not necessarily any of that. There's a lot of folks who never played sports that are uber competitive. You need to have that competitive drive in you. I'm not happy being number 6 in the company. I want to be number 1. Or better yet, I'm not happy being number 2. I want to be number 1. That's the first thing. The second thing I look for is somebody that I believe wants more out of their life than what they're getting from their current position. So whether that is growth that they have a very small territory, they have a very small number, and they've done it for 5 or 6 years and they've been content, but they know they want more. Or something to the point where they go, I eventually want to manage people and I need a leader to challenge me, challenge what I think I know about selling. To do that, I look for that. The third thing I look for is somebody who is hard headed as can be. I want somebody who I will know that I'm going to have a challenge managing. And the reason is because those folks are typically people that in the marketplace will not take no for an answer, and they'll find a way to be successful. And if that means that I have to rip the hair out of my head to manage them on the back end and make sure that they're hitting metrics weekly and KPIs monthly, I'm willing to burden that because I know that they're going to want to perform at a level that's higher than most.
Yeah.
And then the fourth piece, I would just say, is culture, right? If I have a culture that I expect that somebody needs to perform in, I can't hire somebody that I don't think is going to get along with me, that I can't go and have a beer or a glass of wine with, or get along with their colleagues, right? I think that's really important too.
How about like intellectual horsepower, the ability to empathize with other people, think the way other people think, understand how a company makes decisions, motives and desires that other people have, not just themselves?
Yeah, yeah. Emotional intelligence, business intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So when I think about that spectrum, I think one of the reasons why I've always avoided using that on the spectrum is I typically won't sit down with somebody face to face until I know that they're coming from an environment that they've already been trained on how to sell, the
Right.
basic selling 101, which understand your sales cycle, understand who you're speaking with, understand when the funding drops, understand the procurement process, that whole gambit, right? So I'm really, really strict on bringing somebody face to face with me. And it's why recruiters hate working with me because I will say no 99% of the time and only bring in the 1%. They earn their money. So I think when you ask that question, I'm probably just a step ahead on that because I'm expecting them to come into a conversation with me, kind of already checking that box. Emotional intelligence, a little different. The emotional intelligence piece of it, to me, gets recognized in those four categories a little bit more. I feel like that person can't sit with the CEO of the company they're selling to, the janitor of the company they're selling to, and the college intern of the company they're selling to, I probably won't hire them. They
Yeah.
need to be able to wear a suit. They need to be able to take their tie and their jacket off. And they also need to be able to roll up their sleeves and talk to a 22-year-old intern about something as well.
Well, that's a tall order. So I take it
It is.
you don't hire entry level people.
You know, I do hire folks that it's a stretch for them.
Yeah.
If my job description may be a stretch for them, I hire the stretch and I take the gamble on folks that may be, hey, the JD says 5 years, you've got two. The JD says you need to have 4 years of over quota performance and you've got one. And it's if they've got the rest of it that I feel like I can mold and build and create and build a Spartan, right? Build a Spartan warrior. I feel like I'll take that on as a challenge to myself. But I think in general, entry level is an interesting category because there's a lot of really good sellers that on paper are entry level. They just haven't been afforded the opportunity to prove themselves as a professional.
Yeah. But so I've interviewed a lot of people who came out of retail, like working at selling mobile phones in a kiosk in a mall, who are now doing enterprise deals. Not a year later, 5 years later, but they had those characteristics that you're looking for, but didn't weren't aware of where B2B sales can bring them.
Right, right. So you think about that, and they were probably really good performers for you, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day,
Fantastic.
you've got this idea of entry level in emotional intelligence. I've had some of the best interviews with folks that spent 10 years being a bartender, 5 years being a waiter,
Listening
right?
to people. Yeah.
They have the gift of the gab. It's phenomenal. They could sell the Brooklyn Bridge to somebody. We want that. If they don't have the experience, I'm willing to invest in the polish there. Now, for the folks that have the business intelligence a little bit more, let's say that they may be missing some emotional intelligence because of how they've sold or what they've sold. You can polish the emotional intelligence a little bit more too. You want to know why? Because if you kick them out in the territory and you just say, go get punched in the gut, go lose, go get some humility, they're going to start learning how to speak and how to articulate the value proposition a little bit more.
Yeah. And how about as far as like coachability? How do you sense that or really get an idea of are they, because the interview is a very staged thing. Almost anyone can put the face on for an hour in the show.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
resume, it's not a deposition, it's a website, it's a brochure, right?
Well said. Well said. Um, I mentioned about somebody being hard-headed, and now I'm going to talk about coachability, right? But I think it plays in and of itself, right? So being stuck in your ways versus being coachable is a little different. One of the things that I always try to look at is how fresh is a candidate. And typically you can tell in the conversation by fresh. I don't care if they've got 20 years experience selling or 2. They're fresh with their excitement, with their energy, with their enthusiasm. And even if they're putting on a show, you can typically scrape those layers back a little bit more. And those are the types of candidates that inherently that you can show them a path.
Yeah.
If someone is not in a position where they're enthusiastic, if they're questioning while they're even in the interview themselves, if you think that they're skeptical about that process, that coachability becomes a challenge, right? There is a part of me too, Brian, frankly, that I like the challenge of somebody who may not think they're coachable. I like the challenge of being able to break an ego, right? And I think a lot of sales professionals that have had a really long, good career, the best way that you can break a bad habit or break their ego thinking they know the way is educate them on a better way, which ultimately means more money in their pocket, or help them go side by side with them, close business for them and with them, and put more money in their pocket. Once the respect level gets there with them, they bring their guard down a little bit, and then
Yeah.
they allow you to coach them a little bit more.
That's true because too many leaders coach fast. You
Ugh.
know, why don't you do more calls? Why don't you listen more? Okay, well, what does that mean? The other person's like, okay, yeah, sure. That's not coaching. That's like
Yeah.
tip of the day, you know?
Yeah, I tell everybody all the time that, coaching, mentoring, it's a tough position to be in. And it's kind of like parenting for
Yeah,
people who have children, right? You are not going to be liked, first and foremost. And you shouldn't want to be liked if you are managing or coaching salespeople. There is a real reason why people get frustrated at their managers in a sales environment. Why is that important? Because if you're truly pushing them to be better at their craft, you are making them uncomfortable. You are making them go outside of their realm of reality, which is going to make them upset with you. It's going to piss them off. That's okay. But going back to many human beings want to be liked. And they don't know the difference between being liked and being respected.
expected. Yeah.
And what I've told anyone I've managed over the years, and I tell them early on, there's going to be times where you don't like me. But whether it be in 6 months or 6 years, you're going to respect the way that I coach and mentor you because ultimately I have your best interest at heart, whether you see it right now or not. And it's a difficult thing for people to hear, but it's what is necessary to maximize potential out of people.
And do you look for that growth mindset that how do you get better every day? Or do you say, oh, I'm pretty damn good as a, right? And it's like, then it is that slippery slope, you go from it being because of you and then,
Yeah, I look for folks that I can help be a crutch, but I eventually start pulling the crutch from a 90-degree angle to more of a 45, and they have to start walking on their own, right? I say to people all the time, I'll use an analogy for you. I get very frustrated at commercial leaders when they talk about the fact that in a sales team, they need a Michael Jordan, a Scottie Pippen, a Dennis Rodman, as if it is their responsibility to silo one of their performers. There were many games on that Chicago Bulls team where Michael Jordan didn't perform at the level that he was expected, and Scottie Pippen stepped up, or Dennis Rodman stepped up, or Steve Kerr stepped up. And I share that at this point in this conversation because one of the challenges that sales leaders have is as they craft their team and build their team, they automatically think there's the Michael Jordan, there's the Dennis Rodman, there's the Scottie Pippen, rather than saying, how do I make everybody aspire to be the Michael Jordan?
Right.
And part of that, how do I make everybody to be and aspire to be Michael Jordan, is answering your question, which is if you challenge them every day and you invest your sweat equity in those reps every day, they know that you want them to be Michael Jordan, and therefore they'll be willing to have that crutch removed quicker and continue to perform at a trajectory that's expected.
And how do you do that for yourself and your role in life?
Sacrifice. And I say sacrifice because I've got a wife and 3 little kids, and she allows me the opportunity to put a lot of time in. And that time could be on a Saturday morning when I'm playing psychologist with a rep. That could be a Sunday night when a rep's got a big deal Monday morning and I'm willing to hop on a phone. That could be at all different hours. And that sacrifice is what's needed to be a good sales leader. Sales leaders that turn the phone off at 5 o'clock, sales leaders that take every other Friday off to go play golf, those are folks that are going to cap themselves out in their professional development. And more importantly, they have a bigger effect on their team. And it's discouraging when I see that type of behavior because attitude reflects leadership. Comes from the movie Remember the Titans, but attitude reflects leadership. And if you want your team to be a bunch of Michael Jordans, they need to know that their leader has the right attitude to do that, right? Which means that you're working twice as hard as them, that you are putting the effort in twice as much as they are, and you're setting the standard. You're the pace car of the organization.
Yeah. And you came highly recommended for the show. What do you think motivated the team to nominate you?
I take it as a personal victory because a lot of the folks that I think asked for you to bring me in were the folks that I've had an impact on, not just professionally, but personally. And a lot of that impact isn't necessarily them being number 1 rep in the company, making more money than they've ever made before, but it's a lasting impact that they go on to their next gig and they go, wow, I miss Mark Peters' leadership, or wow, I miss that sort of interaction, or I don't have the pace car leadership that I had with Mark. And if I can leave a lasting impression on those folks outside of the business world, man, I made an impact.
Yeah.
And what better way and what better currency than to have an impact on somebody's life forever versus a dollar bill,
Cool. Hey, Mark, I appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect with you? And if you have any openings or you're looking for somebody, feel free to plug that.
Yeah, so this, it's interesting. This is a great opportunity to share this. I am in the process of building out an entire North American sales team. I am 14 days into this new role. And this is a company that we've already acquired 5 other businesses, and we're growing at a fast pace. And I'm looking for the cream of the crop. You're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I accept everybody, and I would be willing to have a conversation with you. You can send me your resume along. I know there's a lot of great talent out there. And if you think that you can learn a lot from my leadership, if you're ready to take the jump and have a really, really big career impacting move, let's have a conversation.